echoes of unseen kindness. In the gilded cage of Harrington Manor, perched on the fog-kissed cliffs of Big Sur, California, 7-year-old Theo Harrington ruled his kingdom with the ferocity of a storm-tossed wave. His father, Victor Harrington, was a titan of Silicon Valley, founder of Harrington Dynamics, a tech behemoth that turned dreams into dollars, empires into legacies. Victor's days blurred into nights of boardrooms and buyouts, leaving Theo adrift in a sea of marble floors and crystal chandeliers. The boy, with his tousled chestnut curls and eyes like fractured emeralds, had inherited his father's sharp intellect but none of his warmth. To Theo, the world was a transaction. Nannies came and went like faulty prototypes, discarded for their failures to pierce his armored heart. The first nanny, Miss Prudence Ellis, lasted 3 weeks. She arrived with a resume longer than Theo's arm and a smile as polished as the manor silverware. "Master Theo, shall we read about knights and dragons?" She'd coo, her voice syrupy with rehearsed affection. But Theo saw through her, the way her eyes flicked to her watch, calculating the hour until her shift ended. He orchestrated her downfall with gleeful precision, hiding her keys in the grand piano, spilling ink on her pristine blouse during art time. "You're not real," he'd sneer, his small voice echoing off vaulted ceilings. "You're just paid to pretend." Ms. Ellis was followed by a parade of pretenders. Lila the yoga enthusiast, who twisted Theo into poses he despised. Reginald the tutor, whose lessons felt like interrogations, and Sophia the singer, whose lullabies grated like chalk on slate. Each one Theo met with the same venomous disdain, his emerald eyes narrowing to slits. "Go away," he'd command from his fortress of silk pillows in the solarium. "Daddy buys people like toys. You're broken already." Victor, glimpsing these tempests during rare evenings home, would sigh and wire another severance check. His testing boundaries, son. Give him time. But time was the one luxury Victor couldn't afford to give. It was on a drizzling October afternoon, when the Pacific roared like a lullaby unsung, that Myra Solis entered the manor. At 52, Myra was no nanny. She was the new cleaning lady, hired through a temp agency to scrub the shadows from the estate's opulent corners. Her hands, etched with the fine lines of a life hard one, bore the calluses of a migrant farm worker turned widow. Myra's husband had been lost to a factory accident in Fresno, leaving her with a modest bungalow and memories stitched like quilts. She had eyes the color of aged cognac, deep, forgiving, and hair streaked silver, pulled into a practical bun that framed a face radiant with quiet stories. Dressed in a simple grey uniform, she moved like mist through the halls, her mop whispering secrets to the tiles. Theo first encountered her in the library, a cavernous room lined with leather-bound tomes Victor collected but never read. He was curled in an armchair, sketching furious storms on sketchpad after sketchpad, when Myra appeared with her bucket and rags. She didn't announce herself with fanfare. She simply knelt by the hearth, polishing the brass fender with strokes as gentle as a mother's touch. "Who you?" Theo demanded, slamming his pencil down. His voice was a whipcrack, honed on a dozen dismissals. Myra paused, her cognac eyes meeting his without flinching. "Myra, mijo. Just here to make things shine a little brighter." Her accent was a soft lilt, remnants of Jalisco fields, rapping words like warm tortillas. "You're not a nanny," he accused, scrambling down to tower over her, though at 4 feet, he barely reached her shoulder. "Nannies lie. They say they care, but they leave when the money stops." Myra's lips curved, not in pity, but in the knowing smile of someone who had weathered monsoons. She set her rag aside and pulled a small, worn locket from beneath her collar, a silver oval etched with faded roses. "This was my roses," she said softly, unclasping it to reveal a tiny photograph, a girl of Theo's age, laughing amid sunflowers. She was 7 when the angels took her. "Cancer," they said. "I wasn't rich like your papa, but I gave her stories every night. Not from books, the ones in my heart. About stars that dance and rivers that sing." Theo stared, his defenses cracking like eggshell. No one had spoken to him of loss before. Victor's grief was buried in spreadsheets, not shared in whispers. "Why tell me?" he muttered, kicking at the rug. "You want a tip? Or pity?" Myra closed the locket with reverence. "Neither, mijo. I tell you because your eyes. They hold storms like mine did. And storms need someone to listen, not fix." Over the weeks that followed, Myra became a quiet constant. While nannies flitted like mayflies, she lingered in the periphery, dusting the solarium while Theo raged at a broken drone, humming folk tunes from her youth as she laundered his linens. She never intruded, but when he wandered into the kitchen, drawn by the scent of fresh empanadas she'd bake for the staff, she would share slivers of wisdom wrapped in pastry. Kindness isn't a crown, Theo, she'd say, her voice a balm. It's the thread that mends the frayed edges of us all. Theo resisted at first, lobbing barbs like stones. You're just the maid. Maids don't matter. But Myra absorbed them without bruise, her responses seeds planted in fertile soil. One evening, as thunder rattled the windows, Theo fled a nightmare to the manor's heart, the vast kitchen where Myra wiped counters under the glow of pendant lights. He found her there, folding dish towels with the precision of origami. I dreamed of monsters, he confessed, voice small as a sparrow's. They took everything. Like they took your Rosa. Myra turned, her face illuminated like a lantern. Without a word, she opened her arms, not as a servant, but as kin. Theo hesitated, the boy who despised embraces as weaknesses, then surged forward. He buried his face in her apron, inhaling the scent of lemon polish and lavender soap. His small arms encircled her waist, fierce and trembling, and in a rush of vulnerability, he pressed a kiss to her weathered cheek, soft, unpracticed, born of a heart finally seen. Tears traced Myra's lashes, not of sorrow, but of the profound ache of being chosen. Oh, mijo, she whispered, holding him as the storm outside wept in harmony. You've given me back a piece of her. Word of that night rippled through the manor like dawn's first light. Victor, arriving home to find his son asleep in Myra's lap at the kitchen table, felt the ground shift beneath his empire. For the first time, he saw the boy beyond the air, the lonely soul adrift in abundance. The next morning, over coffee black as regret, Victor offered Myra not a raise, but permanence, a role as family anchor, with quarters in the East Wing and a promise of partnership in Theo's upbringing. Theo, forever changed, discarded his disdain like an ill-fitting coat. Nannies came no more, in their stead was Myra, weaving tales by firelight, teaching him to plant roses in the cliffside gardens, symbols of resilience, thorns, and all. And in the quiet hours, when Victor joined them, the three formed a tapestry unbreakable, wealth tempered by wisdom, isolation healed by embrace. For in the halls of Harrington Manor, where once a child scorned the high at heart, a kiss had unlocked the truest fortune, one of connection, fierce and forever. It whispered to all who heard, the greatest riches bloom not in vaults, but in the unguarded moments when we dare to hold another storm. Thank you for watching this story till the end. Sparkles. If it touched your heart, please support us. Thumbs up sign, give it a like. Speech balloon, share your thoughts in the comments. Bell, subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. Your support helps us create more stories that inspire and make you believe in miracles. Your participation means a lot to us. Heavy Blackheart Hash.